Hello again, and this is the sixth part in a series that I'm doing on the existence of God. And in this particular video, we're going to cover the area of what we call the fine-tuning of the universe. And basically, there's a principle out there called the anthropic principle, basically that our universe, at least according to Richard Dawkins, has the appearance of design. Okay, has the appearance of design. In other words, obviously life exists on this planet, but to get to the crux of the issue is there anything we can look at again in nature? Romans 1:20 says we can. Romans 1:20 says that by looking at what's been made, you can actually determine that a God exists. Of course, evolution says no. Everything that you see around you, everything that you know to be, well, at least to have the appearance of design, was not designed by any one particular agent or creator. Of course, I'm a Christian, so I'm telling you up front where I'm coming from, that I actually believe that it actually does point to a creator. So this is not a new idea or anything like that. But does the fine-tuning of the universe point to there being a creator? Well, let's watch a couple videos, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Our universe seems to be defined by a set of numbers which in some sense look special. If we had different numbers, we would end up with a sterile universe. People react to this seeming coincidence in a number of ways. You could say it's the outcome of some kind of design or providence. We could say it's a brute fact we have to accept, because these numbers might be determined by some theory which we haven't yet discovered.
For a while it was possible to believe that the laws of nature were not so precisely set as to require the hand of a creator. But then a completely new fundamental property of the universe was discovered. An anti-gravity force present in space itself. It is called the cosmological constant, and when cosmologists calculated its effect on the evolution of the universe, they realized it had to be very finely tuned indeed.
The fine-tunings, how fine-tuned are they? Most of them are 1% sort of things. In other words, if a thing is 1% different, everything is bad. And a physicist could say, maybe those are just luck. On the other hand, this cosmological constant is tuned to 1 part and 10 to the 120 decimal places. Nobody thinks that's accidental. That is not a reasonable idea, that something is tuned to 120 decimal places just by accident. That's the most extreme example of fine-tuning.
No force in the history of cosmology has ever been discovered to be that finely tuned. The cosmological constant needs to be set to 1 part in a trillion. Otherwise the universe would be so drastically different that it would be impossible for us to evolve. That the cosmological constant arrived at such a tiny value by chance seemed to be out of the question, but the alternative explanation was also impossible to contemplate.
Physicists did not want to accept the idea that the laws of nature might be controlled by the benevolence of nature. There should be no reason why the luck should just have it that we can exist. It's too much, it's a stretch. It's much too far to stretch.
It seemed that hidden in the laws of nature was a value so precise that it was impossible to deny that our universe was designed. But a designed universe requires the existence of a designer, a notion that even the anthropic scientists did not want to entertain. The scientists were between a rock and a hard place. Their own discoveries were pointing them towards an intelligent designer.
This is its dislike of mixing religion into physics. I think they were somewhat afraid that if it was admitted that the reason the world is the way it is has to do with our own existence, that could be hijacked by the creationists, by the intelligent designers.
So as you can see from the video, and this is the thing that's most disturbing to me about all of these videos that I've done, when you study the history of science, and I'm going to show a couple more clips here, but when you study the history of science, the bias, scientists are supposed to be so open-minded. Here it is, May of 2018 when I make this, and the division in our country between liberals and conservatives and just people in general, it boggles the mind. But today, most scientists today, especially if you're an evolutionist, since you control what's taught in the public schools now, you guys have become the inquisitors, and you refuse to let the evidence take you where it points. You really do. And that's why, more than anything else, I believe I am not an atheist, because I will not be dictated to by anyone what to believe and what not to believe. And your evidence, as time goes by, has been trashed, even by your own scientists. Even though it looks like the universe has been designed. In other words, we have to talk about probabilities. Just in that one, they were just talking about one of the constants. It's 10 to the 120th power. 10 to the 120th, 122nd, something like that. Again, Fred Hoyle said anything 10 to the 50th is a miracle. And I have more clips that I can show you that talk about the fine-tuning of the universe. It is impossible that this universe was not designed. And again, we're only talking about one of the constants. When you add all the constants together that they're talking about, when you add all of them together, not just the one, the probability goes much, much higher. But, of course, you can't talk about stuff like this in school, even though the scientists are talking about it. And again, because the scientists have become the new inquisitors. They decide who gets what funding. They decide who gets to keep their jobs, not keep their jobs based upon what they say. It's a con game anymore. People have a political bias for some reason, somehow. Scientific political bias now is the rule and not the exception anymore. And so that's one of the main reasons why I would never become an atheist. If you could present it to me in an honest fashion, that would be different. But again, the scientific evidence is against you now. And as time goes by, and as proof comes out of the complexity of life, again, not just on the fact how the universe was created, the Big Bang, and all the things I've covered so far, the probability of it all happening by chance, which is all you've got, evolutionist, is chance. Again, you do not have anything else but chance at the beginning of the universe. And if you'll go back and watch my Big Bang video and watch close to the end of it, you'll see that right now, today, in May of 2018, string theory, the multiverse theory, and dark energy, dark matter, those things, they're all religion right now. And they're saying in those videos that it'll be 100 years from now before we know the truth. But that's all speculation. Fine, that's fine. So, I come down to this, and this is what bugs me the most, is the scientific bias. And it doesn't matter what the evidence is anymore. It doesn't matter that it's so highly unlikely that it's impossible to have happened by chance. But that's okay. All you have to do is propose a multiverse theory, although you can't prove the multiverse theory. It is not a proven fact. It is not settled science. So guess what? It shouldn't be taught. The evolutionist gets on to the creationist for wanting to teach intelligent design, although there's more evidence of intelligence based upon the information, and yes, not Shannon information, like one of my comments was making. I didn't specify the type of information. I mean, I didn't define the type of information I was talking about, but in the examples I gave when I covered the video on information, I talked about a computer code inside the DNA, which is not Shannon information, by the way. So it just boggles my mind how biased scientists have always been. Back to the steady state theory, back when the steady state theory held sway. They would say, oh yeah, well you Christians say that God is eternal. Well, we say the universe is eternal. And it was just a dogmatic statement. There was no real proof that it was eternal. Now, granted, there was not the proof there is today that the Big Bang is true, but now we've got the Big Bang, and it's true. And 13.6 billion years isn't enough time for all the different types of life on this earth to have evolved like they say it has. The scientists back in the day of the steady state theory knew this. And so when it happened, and there's a guy named Robert Jastrow, he wrote a book called God and the Astronomers. You ought to read it. Okay? Anyway, and I have a video from Dennis Prager who talks about knowing Robert Jastrow personally. And Robert Jastrow was just appalled at his peers because the evidence pointed to a beginning, and they hated that idea. They just hated it. They were just filled with bias. In 1929, I have another video talking about that. They did not want to believe in the Big Bang Theory. So bias has come down. Worldviews are shaped by bias more than it is by the evidence. And it doesn't matter what the evidence is anymore. It doesn't matter what the evidence is anymore. People don't really care. Well, I care. And I'm not going to have the wool pulled over my eyes and say, well, we'll figure it out someday, 100 years from now, or something like that. I'm not going to have the wool pulled over my eyes by anybody. And again, the evidence is mounting the other way. There is a creator. There is a being out there that put all of this together. Now, of course, the God of the Bible claims to be that God, and I believe in that more than I believe in... and what is it? I always hear this. People always claim, well, you believe in fairy tales, and you believe in... Well, you believe in fairy tales if you believe all of this happened by accident. Again, anything 1 to the 50th power, 10 to the 50th power is a miracle. If the probability of something happening is 10 to the 50th power, it's a miracle that it happens. And yet, I'll say it again, one protein, one of the proteins necessary for life coming into existence by accident with just 115 amino acids is 10 to the 164th power. That's impossible, and all we're talking about is just the DNA, one protein molecule. We're not talking about the DNA molecule. Also, now let's get back to this evidence here. We're talking about the anthropic principle as far as the universe goes. Just one of the constants is 10 to the 120th power, 10 to the 120th power. Which means if you could run a ruler from one end of the universe to the other end of the universe, and you moved it by 1 inch, we wouldn't be here. That's how finely tuned it is. And you're going to tell me that that's all by chance. If you believe that, then you believe in fairies. You believe in stuff like that. Now, I do believe in miracles. I do believe Jesus lived. And there's a lot of evidence for that, but I don't have time to go into that one. That'll be something else. But anyway, now I'm going to show you a small video. It's out on the internet. You can watch it somewhere else too. But here's a small video that proves 100% that God exists.
My name is Gerald Schroeder. I have a, thank God, a strong science background from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, bachelor's, master's, PhD, 7 years in the physics staff. Seen a whole range of atomic bombs detonated, moved to Israel, met my wife, Barbara Sofer, a great writer, and then teach Torah and science. So luckily, I'm lucky that I have the two that come together. We see here, most amazingly, that on the extreme left edge, it shows a beginning to the universe. Now go back less than 50 years. If I were teaching that at Tech, I might have, a person could lose tenure saying that there was a creation of the universe. It sounds like it's Bible. Because less than 50 years ago, the overwhelming scientific opinion was the universe is eternal. There was never a beginning. The Bible is wrong from the very first sentence. And then we discovered, suddenly, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, the Bell Labs in New Jersey, the northeast of the US, discovered the echo of the Big Bang, the energy left over, which George Gamow, 60 years ago, predicted that if there had been a universe created hot and small, it would have exploded, and the energy would get more and more dilute. And Penzias and Wilson, these Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, discover this energy that had been predicted overnight. The Bible got it right. There was a beginning to the universe.
Enough said. Thanks for watching.